The Central Bank of Nigeria has announced a significant shift in policy, resuming the sale of foreign exchange to bureau de change operators nationwide. This decision comes 3 years after the previous governor, Godwin Emefiele, suspended sales in 2021. Also, the Nigerian Senate has sought an amendment to CBN Act No. 7 of 2007, proposing an amendment to the tenure of the CBN governor and a limit to the amounts the federal government can borrow from the Apex Bank under the Ways and Means advances. To further talk about this, I'm joined by Mukhtar Mohammed, the CEO, Asher Investment. Thank you, Mukhtar Mohammed, for joining me today.
Thank you, Perpetua, for having me.
All right, well, we all have been keeping up with CBN's new circulars and guidelines, and I might as well start by asking how many of such have been released in the past, 7 to 8 weeks. How many have we received?
CBN circular. They call them circular Bank of Nigeria now.
Well, that was on a lighter note. Now, the latest of these circulars is the one that says that the CBN has commenced the sale of foreign exchange to eligible BDCs to meet the demand for invisible transactions. And I recall that I've spoken to a lot of, financial market analysts, and they've talked about their concerns for invisible transactions and, creating sort of a window, to cater to that. So first, let me get your reaction to this.
Yeah, long overdue, since they were not able to create an alternative window for the invisible people. So they have to go back to the bureau de change. And I think for me, that tells you why investors sometimes don't want to come to this country because of policy somersault. I didn't see any reason why the CBN will more or less like going cap in hand, begging the BDC to come back. So for me, I didn't think it was a welcome development. Even if I feel that as it stands now, it could help liquidity in the market. But again, when you took those decisions some years ago, you should have known the consequences of it. And again, with the CBN taking the decision, what happened? Why did they not? I remember during Godwin Emefiele time, they took their decisions from the BDC and gave them to the money deposit bank. Was there an infringement? Was there something the money deposit banks were not doing? And then again with the BDC, how are you going to regulate them? I mean, there's a lot that is calling for answers. And then we said, oh, the BDCs, they are there now, so you're giving them $20,000, and you say they shouldn't give cash. What are the strategy put in? So there's a lot of questions to happen. But the good thing is, at least it will help the liquidity in the market, especially on that retail side. And again, but I hope that what we are seeing is not what we've been seeing from this management team of CBN or this administration. They seem to see it before they begin to think of how do we go about doing it. Hopefully, they will be doing it from today. The BDCs will start having those effects in their system, and then we'll be able to do the needful. But if whereby the CBN is still having issues, saying, oh, we've not sent it, we are going to send it, then that will cause another panic in the market. Maybe the panic to be like, oh, the CBN does not even have that dollar. So that could see the Naira going higher again.
Now, from the foregoing, does it seem to you that there is some form of correlation or even direction in the CBN's handling of the forex market crisis? You probably want to do an aggregate of all the circulars and guidelines and all of that. Does it seem to you that there is actually a policy direction? There is somewhere they are going with all of this?
Yes, there seems to be somewhere they are going, but in the middle of the road, they seem to be confused and be scared of because of what is happening, and maybe because of the cry from Nigeria. They seems not to be sticking to their guts on what they actually want to do. I think getting back the bureau de change back, it's something that they didn't think they wanted to do it, but they must have twisted their hands to do it. Why am I saying that? Because before now, 3 days ago, the CBN came up with a circular that said every bureau de change must have to recapitalize. We have a tier 1 bureau de change for $2 billion and a tier 2 maybe for $400 million. I mean, say 400 million, 500 million naira. But as it stands now, when you see the numbers of bureau de change that they are giving these FX, how many of them are actually in tier 1 or tier 2? What are the criteria that was used to give them this FX? Do they meet all those what the CBN has set out to do? So I think initially they seem to have a roadmap, but I think because of the pressure, it seems to be digressing a little.
Now, based on what you just said, we know that there are 5,690 BDC operators nationwide. That's what you get from CBN website. However, only 1,373 BDC operators have actually been screened to get this particular allocation. Now, looking at this, does this seem to you like maybe they looked at some of those requirements they put in the guidelines to probably, screen it down to 1,000 where we are now? What do you think?
But Richard, we don't have the crystal ball. They've not even told us, like I said, they've not even told us what were the modality that was used in getting some of these BDCs. So we'll wait for them. But again, you remember that it's ongoing. I spoke to some of the BDC people yesterday, traders yesterday. There seems to be that it's an ongoing process. So more names may be added as time goes on. So maybe these are the people that will enjoy the first installment of it. Maybe the second time we have some different other names getting that. That's what I think. I think it's ongoing. Again, maybe again I'm looking at, okay, they do this, and towards the end you begin to see them when they know that they have been able to stabilize the market, then they will go back to their initial roadmap at the capital base of tier one bank and said, okay, maybe if you're a tier one BDC, you get so amount of location from CBN. If you're a tier two, you get, and you must register. I think they might do that later, but I think what they are more interested in now is to stabilize the exchange rate.
All right, the devil, they say, is in the detail. We're looking at the sum of $20,000 to be sold to each BDC at the rate of 1,301 naira to the dollar. Now, this particular figure represents the lower band rate of executed spot transactions at NAFEM. That was for the previous trading day as of 27 February 2024, which means this probably will change, based on this particular criteria. And then all BDCs can sell to end users at a margin not more than 1% above the purchase rate from CBN. I'd like you to speak to this. What do you make of it?
Well, if the NAFID rate as yesterday was about 1,400 or thereabouts, and you are selling at the BDC, selling to the BDC as 1,300, is that the true value of our naira as it stands now? Knowing fully where the NAFTA's end is where you even have more liquidity than the BDC end. So we need to see maybe the NAFTA's end will now in turn close up with the BDCs. And then I hope to see that at the end of today. But one good thing that has happened is that they have already created panic in the market. Like I always tell them, speculators are part of the market. They are allowed to play the market. But the best way you can deal with speculators is to come up with a better product. And so I'm happy that they've come up with a better product that is causing panic and fear and among the speculators, and also greed is also playing in between those lines now. So we could begin to see that the rate will begin to stabilize. Instead of going upward, we may see a downward movement, and that might be good for us because the major challenge in the market has been liquidity. And finally, the CBN seems to be addressing those core liquidity issues. Like I've said in your program before, the challenge why we are where we are today is that you took away that market for 3 years. For 3 years, you did not create another market to meet the need of those retail FX traders. I mean, it takes FX users that need 1,000, 2,000, or some of them need as low as $500 or $200 to even pay for advert on social media platform. You took away those space and you didn't create another one for them.
All right, let's leave that particular story and move on to other stories. So let's look at some of the amendments being proposed to the CBN Act by the Senate. Now, this particular bill proposes to amend Section 8, subsection 2 of the CBN Act. It proposes single non-renewable term of 6 years for the governor and the deputy governors, and a single non-renewable term of 5 years for external directors appointed on the board of the CBN. What do you make of this particular amendment, or proposed amendment, as the case may be?
You see, the challenge in Nigeria is that this amendment came up because of what has happened in the previous administration. And it seems to be that, when you make a CBN governor last too long, then it seems to have most power to corruptly enrich himself or do a lot of corrupt things. I think that's where this amendment comes in from. But then you don't have to look at one man then to begin to think of amendment. If you look at the governor of the Bank of America, they stay, I can't remember their tenure, but I know it's not 1 year tenure. You have You have them stay there for a very long time to create stability, to know how the market works and everything. So if we are to do something, we should also be looking at as the global best practice. What is the global best practice? That is what we should be involving ourselves in, not trying to, trying to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again because somebody did it before. It's all about the regulators or the administration that were there not putting their feet on the ground, or whoever was in the helm of the CBN became a tool to the executive rather than being independent. So you must not look because something happened, then you try to change up everything just to make sure that such thing doesn't happen again. It has to come from who is there. The law establishing the CBN that give a 2-year tenure for the central bank governor, I still think is not a bad law. I still think it's a very
All right,
good
we'll
law.
take a break now. We'll be back, and when we return, we'll continue the conversation. I believe you can hear me. Glad to know you're still with us. And I'm still speaking with Mukhtar Mohammed. We're looking at some of the amendments that the Senate is seeking for the CBN Act 2007. Mukhtar, thank you for staying with me.
Thank you.
All right, so in less than 30 seconds, I'll see if you can do this in less than 30 seconds. Now, the most intriguing proposal is the limitation on the federal government's borrowing from the central bank through ways and means advances. Now, this particular bill proposes capping such advances at 10% of the average government revenue in the prior 3 years, with mandatory full repayment within 3 months from the day it is made available. Now, it's also said that it tries to incentivize timely repayment and saying that any outstanding balance will be held against and deducted from the government's share of the federal allocations. I'd like to get your thoughts on this in less than 30 seconds.
Like I said, there was a cover in the former one. It was whoever was in leadership did not follow that. And so whatever you are going to put in there, it depends on who is owning the home affair. The person could look the government in his eyes and say, look, the CBN is independent. We have a right to do what we have to do. We are not going to give you this. It was there before. It's not something new. They have just reduced it. But again, it is not in the document. I keep saying Nigeria is not devolved document. Nigeria is devolved implementations of those laws that are in those documents. So whatever they put in there is fantastic. If you want 1 year, 10%, 5%, come up with the penalty. But how implementable is it with the person at the helm of the affair? It's that time. That's what matters.
Well, I think that's a good place to anchor asking that particular question. It's all about implementation. Those laws were there, though some changes are being made to them, but they were actually there when these things happened. Thank you so much, Mukhtar Mohammed, for sharing your thoughts with me today on Business Edge.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.